up against the state forest, and the state forest comes right up against the national forest, and the national forest comes right up against the national park. And then way out there by Mariposa, there's BLM land. Very little BLM land in California. The Bureau of Land Management basically is in charge of all the land that no one else wants, right? That's why probably 70% of Nevada is BLM land. In Oregon, a huge portion is BLM land. The only thing below BLM is Department of Soil Conservation. Basically, we watch the water run off the soil, right? The BLM is so loosely controlled that you can camp anywhere on BLM land for 30 days without a permit. On day 31, you just have to move 10 feet over. The BLM basically is the federal government saying to the states, some of this land does not in any way, shape, or form generate revenue. It's more of a burden than a benefit, and so we'll take it off your hands. Well, in Oregon, just like in parts of Northern California, Nevada, and Washington, the BLM leases land to ranchers. Ranchers run cattle on BLM land. Cattle don't like juniper. Cattle don't like ponderosa pine. So what do the ranchers do? The ranchers burn that down. They set fires. They do arson. They burn down the juniper. Why? Because very quickly the sage will take its place within a few weeks or months. By the time you get the herd back to the burn area, there are shoots of sage and other bitters that are coming up. The antelope like it, the cattle like it, etc. By the way, screw the antelope. You're going to shoot the antelope because the antelope are eating what the cows need. Well, so there were a couple arson fires that I am intimately familiar with in 2001. The so-called Hardy-Hammond fire, as it was called, was named after these two guys. So the right-wing guys that are up in Burns, Oregon tonight, taking over a federal building, they're doing it in defense of a father and son who have set several arson fires. They have been charged several times by the feds. The last trial that they had was moved from Eugene to Pendleton, Oregon, and even then they were convicted. It was moved out of Eugene. You know why? Because there's too many hippies. Because all the people, if you were ever in front of a jury...
Why is Bryan Suits so against these guys? They were burning fires for the sake of ranching, not arson. Arson is malicious. This was done for a productive purpose. Bryan Suits sounds a little biased for some reason.
Dwight, the father, and his son Stephen, 43, they were on trial yet again. He went from 19 counts down to 9. They were going to be on trial, federal trial in Eugene. It was moved to Pendleton, Oregon, home of the Pendleton Roundup, a extremely conservative Eastern Oregon gun-slinging, get the hell off my land, F you feds area. This is a federal jury made up of locals. And you know what? They convicted these guys of arson on federal lands, on public lands. These are conservative.
They already served jail time, so why do they have to serve more time?
They were sentenced to 5-year minimum and $250,000 restitution, which they have in cattle and land. They have that. They were due to turn themselves in on Monday to a U.S. Marshal to be delivered to federal prison. But what happened? They called in the cavalry, and these guys, these disaffected guys who have this bizarre notion of the relationship between the individual and the federal government in the United States.
Bryan Suits he sounds more like a liberal here. I always thought he was a conservative. Now he sounded like a whiny little bleeding heart baby liberal. I don't know what's happened to him. I used to have a lot of respect for him, but the way he's talking on this makes him sound like the opposite side suddenly.
Private property. This is not Ammon Bundy in Nevada. These are guys who were doing arson on public lands. These are the same kind. This is like somebody...
It's not arson if they're doing it for ranching purposes and it didn't get out of... I haven't heard that it got out of control. I mean, I don't get what he's whining about. Bryan Suits has changed.